presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters.
Well, hello, thanks for joining. My name is Ron Moore. I'm a solution architect for TopDown Consulting. Basically, I'm an Essbase geek. I've been an Essbase geek since about 1994. I'm extremely happy to be doing a webcast on PBCS because I think PBCS lets us get back to what made Essbase great and then what later made planning great. That's the fact that we can get down to business building our models faster, and we can get down to business objectives and focus more on business objectives and less on infrastructure and administration. With that, I'd like to introduce my colleague Ludovic.
Yes, thank you, Ron, and thanks for attending. My name is Ludovic Dipaz. I'm a solution architect with TopDown Consulting as well. My background is more an engineer with a finance background as well. And I know a little bit of Essbase. I discovered this tool in '99. And I've done a lot of Essbase, but also a lot of data warehouse, SQL Server as well. And I have a little blog here about everything about Hyperion. And I live in Miami, in Florida. Very quickly about TopDown, we've been in business for 16 years. Our consultants have an average of 20 years of combined Hyperion and industry experience. Most of our clients are like global 2,000 companies, and we've implemented like 1,000 implementations for approximately 500 clients. About this presentation. So this presentation, it's a business case to the cloud. We'd like to share with you what you're going to see when you're going to work in the cloud and what's the difference between working on the cloud and working on premise. And also what's exactly the same whether you're on the cloud or on premise. We'll talk about like, is PBCS right for you today, or maybe it's right for you tomorrow. And this presentation, it's not a sales pitch for the cloud or for PBCS in particular. So if you look at the basics, what is Oracle's mantra for the cloud? So Larry says three things. Number one, it is simple to get, easy to own, and a joy to use. So any of the cloud application, not just like EPM systems or not just PBCS, that applies also to whatever other offering Oracle has on the cloud. And more or less, I think it's confirmed for PBCS. So what's so specific about like EPM on the cloud? The first thing is that if you've used EPM, like let's say Hyperion planning, on-premise, and you switch to the cloud, for an end user, it's not a big change. You're already familiar with all EPM tools. You're going to use the same smart view. You're going to have the same workspace, or you can have a different version of the workspace. We'll talk about it. But basically, like most of the users I've seen, they use smart view primarily. And smart view on the cloud or smart view on premise, that's the same. The only difference is that the connection, instead of connecting to a server that's in your company, you're going to use the cloud server. You implement EPM on the cloud with minimal IT resources. That was already true for on-premise because like most of EPM projects are not IT projects, but they are mostly FP&A business users projects. But here, you're removing the entire infrastructure questions from your project. So you rely even less on IT. There's a big thing also, is that there is no capital investment in hardware. And also, you have no hardware to support. Your subscription is all-inclusive, which means that you're not going to pay maintenance on your cloud subscription. It's all included. And also something that we've noticed, like it's important for finance departments, is that when you use the cloud, you rely even less on outside departments. Like you have your software, you do your implementation, you need IT to set up your security, to be able to pull data from the source systems, but that's all. And like we've noticed that finance users, you know, like if you compare, let's say, EPM on the cloud, planning on the cloud, to Microsoft Excel, when the user uses Excel, he's on his own. And they have a tendency to want to replicate the same behavior when it comes to their EPM system. And they can do it with the cloud. Now let's have a look at what are the similitudes and the differences between on-premise and on the cloud. So we're going to look at different things: infrastructure, implementation, the specialized or built-in modules, user interface, upgrades, data integration, administration, and features that are available on the cloud but not on-premise, and vice versa. So if we look at infrastructures, basically it's different, because when you're on the cloud, you don't have the environment in-house, okay? It's hosted by Oracle. One big difference you have is that you have two environments, one test, dev, and one prod. Okay? On-premise, you have as many environments as you want. Is it a good thing? I'm not so sure about that. Because in many occasions, we've seen that if you start to have like prod, pre-prod, UAT, test, development, these environments are not in sync. And what happens is you're going to have something that works in development but not in test, or works in test but not in prod or pre-prod. So here you have two environments. It is a big simplification, but sometimes it helps. You have the same tools to migrate, or very similar tools to migrate artifacts. You have LCM. On-premise, it's shared services, and on the cloud, it is application management, if I'm correct. We're going to look at it a bit later. Same security, same single sign-on. You have a few things that are better with the cloud. First of all, in the enterprise version that's going to be released soon, you have a disaster recovery environment available with you directly. Not all companies or not all clients are able to set up a disaster recovery environment and create all the scripting to go from like your production environment to the DR environment. That's a big thing and big help there. You have a full data encryption, antivirus, and then even a bit later, IP whitelisting and a better integration with LDAP. IP whitelisting is quite important. That means that today, if I have like the IP address or like the URL of one environment, I can go and connect to it. With IP whitelisting, only certain IP addresses will be able to access one environment. When we look at the implementation, it's basically the same. Okay, you're going to use the same Calc Manager. You have the same Smart View, planning, admin, extension. You have the same standard interface. If you want, you have the simplified interface available on premise. It's the same. But more importantly, when you look at an EPM project, what's key is to make good requirement gathering, having a good design, and having good data quality. And the questions, the problematics you're going to have on-premise are exactly the same when you go to the cloud. Your requirements are not going to change whether you're on the cloud or you're on-premise. The design might change, but basically it will be the same. Data quality, like if you don't have good data quality at the source, it's not because you're going to be on the cloud that suddenly your data quality is going to improve. Under the covers, the products are the same. And the skill sets to implement like EPM on the cloud are the same as implementing EPM on-premise. What's different is that when you're on the cloud, you don't have EAS. EAS is the Essbase Administration Service. That's a piece of software that allows you to go and see like directly the Essbase outline. You can run data load rule files to load data into Essbase, and you can also run calc scripts there. That's quite a change, and that's why it's not 100% identical skill sets, I guess, because even if you're doing planning, you always, when you do a planning implementation, under the covers, it is Essbase, and you want to see what's in Essbase. The second difference is that when you use planning on the cloud, you don't have EPMA. For us, it's a big relief. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but no more EPMA. So if you have an EPMA application and you want to migrate to the cloud, you can still do it, but you're not going to maintain your dimensions with EPMA. Specialized modules or built-in modules, workforce, Capex, project planning. Today, they are not available on the cloud. They are going to be released very soon, probably Q1, who knows, in a version that's called Enterprise PBCS. User interface. You're going to use the same smart view, and you're going to use the same workspace. The simplified interface is going to gradually take over the classic workspace we've been used to for many years. So it's not exactly the same. I've never seen any on-premise user using the simplified interface. So that's why we say it's not exactly the same. Upgrade. So when you're on-premise, if you want to, or if you need to upgrade your system, you need to probably set up new servers, do a new installation, run the configuration, then migrate everything. Or if you need to apply patches, you apply patch in your dev environment, see if it's working, and then you apply it to your production. When you're on the cloud, it is different. Your entire environment is updated once a month, every month. You don't have to ask, and whether you want the patches or the updates to be applied or not, it will be applied. And with that, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay. Okay, so for many of you, the question is, what are you going to see that's different and the same when I actually start to build my models? And as I said before, the first thing is that you can get started a lot faster because you don't have to focus on infrastructure. Once you buy it and complete all the paperwork, the environments, the two environments, the test and the prod, become available within a couple of days. So it's very quick to get started. initializing the application, Ludo's already pointed out some of the differences in the actual modules that you have, such as, there's no EAS, there's no EPMA. We're going to look at some screenshots of this in a minute, but the first thing you would do in building is initialize the application, and that's pretty similar. If you've done this before, there's a set of questions about your years and your time periods and your currencies and plan types. Those all the same questions. You run that initialization and you're ready to start building. Now, you have the same manage dimensions feature that you have in Workspace. You have exactly the same Calc Manager. Forms development are exactly the same. You have the same Smart View admin extension. You could start building your outline with managed dimensions, but that's very kind of manual, slow process, not very automated. You could also build your outlines with the Smart View admin extension. If you haven't used that before, that's a Smart View tool for uploading metadata files. So you could theoretically build your whole application that way, but what you're probably going to do is use import-export metadata, and then to load the data, you'll probably use import-export data. And so let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so this is from Workspace. You'll go to Administration, Import and Export, and then you'll see the items for importing or exporting data and metadata. In this case, we're going to choose metadata. You'll see that it's a little small to read, but you'll see the list of dimensions. You'll pick the dimension you want to import, or this is an export, but I did this export so you can see what it exports. That's under fields exported. That's not what it looks like. It's actually, those field names are across, and then you have the actual metadata going down. But I wanted you to see the list of fields that are exported by default. And it's largely the same, conceptually the same, a few minor differences compared to what you'd see in on-premise. So you've got a number of options, some of which are the same and some of which are simplified but allow you to get the same things done. You can also use FDM-EE Lite, which in PBCS is called data management, and we will take a look at that in just a minute. Okay, so if I do an import, it's going to ask me for which dimension to import. It's going to ask me for the name of the file. Now, this integrates nicely with my own desktop. So if I export, it gives me a typical download menu. Where do I want to store this, or do I want to open it, and what file do I want to open it in? If I want to import, it's going to ask me to browse to find the file on my desktop. You've got a set of options there. For example, do I want to automatically refresh the database, or do I want to do that manually? So I hit update, and away I go, and that will import my accounts dimension. Now that's a little bit manual in that we're running each dimension build individually. There's a tool called EPM Automate, and that allows us to script all of this and run batch jobs. And we can schedule that with our Windows scheduler so that we can pretty much automate the whole build process. EPM Automate, what you're looking at in the screenshot at the bottom, is a module that I install on my desktop. And to install it, I'll go to Tools, Install, go down to EPM Automate. it downloads an install package. It gets installed in the C Oracle by default in the C Oracle directory on your local machine, and then you execute this from there. It uses the REST API under the covers to connect to your PBCS implementation. Okay, so that covers how you're going to build your outline, and I didn't show you importing data, but the same process works for importing and exporting data. How do you administer PBCS? It's a little bit different. If you're familiar with on-premise, you're going to notice really the same tools conceptually, just you've got a few limitations. PBCS on the left, on-premise on the right. This is really the FDM or FDM-EE comparison. You'll notice the other section on the right is missing, but you have the same data load workbench. You have the same setup capability where you will pick your target application and your source application, set up your import setups and data load rules. So this is a little bit limited compared to on-premise FDM or FDM-EE, but same things conceptually. Okay, so now talking a little bit more about administration. If we go one layer up and we go to Navigate Administer, in PBCS you'll see that we have the data management, calculation manager, application management, etc. If we go to on-premise, you'll see in the middle we have all of the EPMA elements, which are missing from PBCS. To take it one layer lower, this is where we have the equivalent of LCM and shared services. So in PBCS, we've got where you see native directory and groups, that looks just like shared services, but we can enter our users directly to the native groups. It's also possible to integrate PBCS with your local, for example, MSAD, using something called single sign-on. The applications that I've worked with so far have not done that while I was there. So we've used the native groups to add users. If you go under applications and application snapshots, you'll see the LCM equivalents, where you have the ability to download either an entire LCM package or elements of the LCM package. And under, for example, application snapshots, there's a snapshot taken each evening, and if you rename that snapshot, you end up essentially having a backup each evening, and you can pretty easily download those LCM packages to your desktop and then either move those over to, say, from your dev to your prod environment, or use those same LCM packages to replicate your PBCS implementation locally.
Yes, and you can even use these LCM to migrate your application from on-premise to the cloud, or even from the cloud to on-premise.
Good point.
Good work.
One thing that I should have put a slide for is the inbox outbox. So one of the questions that you may have is, how do I actually move my files back and forth? And there is a, if you go to the simplified interface, there's an inbox outbox location where you essentially upload and download files from that location. If you run a calc script data export, your data exports can also be sent to that same location. So you have control over your data export files and how to re-import those files.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will turn it back over to Ludo.
Yeah. So about the features, we have the same Essbase engine, same planning engine. There are a few things that we find easier to use with the cloud. Like you can access PBCS on the cloud from your mobile. You can do it also if it's on-premise. I've never been able to do it on-premise. I can do it like with the cloud. Same for the tablet access. And about the mobile access, you have like an application that you can download from the App Store or from the Android store. And with this application, you can look at some data, you can run calculations, and you can check the status of a calculation. And I think that's exactly what I am expecting from a mobile application to do. Like I don't think I can submit a plan from a mobile phone, but I can run a calculation and I want to know if like my calculation ran or not, or if something happened. And they nailed it. Yeah.
Really, many of the administration features are available in the simplified interface. However, I don't think you're going to use many of those administration features from the simplified interface. And it really is as easy as I just sent myself a link to my phone, clicked that link, entered my username and password, and I was into the simplified interface. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and the simplified interface was initially developed for the iPad. So that it's not like an interface that was developed from a computer and then was ported on a phone. It was developed like for mobile devices from the get-go. And that changes, like, you know, that's a different approach. And I think that's the right approach to, like, when you want to go with the mobile interfaces. And by the way, because it's we didn't talk about web browsers, but like the cloud, it works on modern web browsers. Like the simplified interface, I've been able to use the simplified interface with Safari. You can use Chrome. There's no problem there. No problem. Still, the best I think is to use Firefox. Okay. So there are some very interesting features that are available on the cloud only. We're going to quickly go over these features. The first one is planning forms autosave and undo button. So the thing is, whenever you enter data in a cell and then you move to the other cell, automatically the data is saved and the values are aggregated. So that means that if you entered a lot of data, one by one, when you hit like at the end, when you're done, you're done. You don't need to wait for anything to happen or for another calculation to be performed. The second one's been like something that's been bugging me personally for quite some time. Is been to be able to define valid intersections. So what it means is that some data, some slices of data, you can make it read-only. Then that prevents you from entering wrong data. An example. Imagine you have two dimensions, or one dimension where you have your cost centers and your profit centers in the same dimension. Cost centers, they cannot have revenue, and profit centers, they might have revenue and expenses. Now, if you take your cost center, because Essbase is a database, it's a multi-dimensional database, but it's still a database, you have an intersection, let's say, between a cost center and the revenue account. And if you go and you enter data, you will load data, you will create data that doesn't make sense. With this feature, define valid intersection, you will take all your profit center, your cost centers, all your revenue accounts, and you say, okay, this slice of data, you cannot write there. And automatically it becomes read-only, and then users, they won't be able to enter wrong data. The next feature is Smart Push. So when you create a form on the cloud, you have one tab that's present on the cloud but not on-premise. With that, you can do Smart Push. What it does is that whenever you enter data in your planning application, if you have a reporting application, automatically the data will be pushed from the planning application to the reporting application. Whenever you hit send, save, or submit, data is pushed. So you don't need to, so when you have this feature, you don't need to receive an email from users who say, can you push data to reporting, please? And that happens a lot in many implementations. And here, it's automated out of the box. So that's a great feature. I've been waiting for this one for quite some time. Next. Okay. Planning sandboxes. What is a sandbox? You can create your own private version of a plan or a forecast, and you keep it as private as long as you work on it. When you're done, and if you're satisfied with your numbers, you can publish your results. If you're not happy, you discard your sandbox. That's a better way to do like what if scenario. Like when we do requirements, like 80%, 90% of the time, we have this requirement which is, oh, I want to be able to do what if. Okay. What happens is that most of the time, when you're doing your forecast, you might have 1, 2, maybe 3 days to do your forecast, so you need to act fast. If you need to copy like version from working to what if, work there, it's not really happening. With the sandbox, actually, you don't have to ask anything to anybody. You just go, you do your sandbox, you're happy, you publish. You're not happy, you keep it for you, you discard it. And I think that's a better approach that works. The next one, and the last one actually, it is Excel formulas in planning. So you can create a formula in Excel with SmartView. Okay, you have a SmartView, you create your formulas. Then you can push it to planning and execute your Excel calculations within planning.
And this is really easy to do, and I think these two items are very important because they're end-user features. And for the last 10 years or so, we've spent a lot of time with Essbase and planning with developer features and with administrator features, but we haven't done that much. We haven't given the users that much that's new, the end users, the finance end users. And now planning sandboxes and Excel formulas are exactly the type of things that the finance end users are going to find valuable. Finance end user can easily add, it takes probably about 5 minutes to learn how to create Excel formulas. When you save those, they're pushed back to be stored in planning, as Ludo pointed out. And these are both pretty big new features that are going to make our end users happier. So we're really now putting more power in the hands of the end users where it belongs.
Yeah. That leads us to, now with all these new features and all these exciting things, now is the cloud right for your organization? First of all, why would you stay on premise? We found three reasons. The first one is probably the best reason, is that you need to have a total control of your infrastructure for whatever reason. Then I don't think that anybody enjoys maintaining EPM servers. And if you might need or you might want, I don't think you want to use EPMA. Actually, for me, it's more a selling point to go to the cloud. But like, if you absolutely need to have EPMA, then in this case, you might need to stay on the cloud. There is a tool, DRM, that's much better than EPMA. That's not available on the cloud yet, but Oracle is working on it. So once you have DRM on the cloud, then I don't really see that it's better replacement for it. So why would you go to the cloud? First of all, it can be like a strategic decision. Like I've been in cases with clients that said, okay, it was before PBCS, and they said, look, can we have like our Hyperion servers hosted, or can we have them on the cloud? Because I have part of my strategic objective of my department, that's mostly IT talking, or IT, they have an objective to migrate their applications to the cloud. Because when you think about it, if you're a retailer, or if you're building houses, like maintaining servers or having hosting servers, especially EPM servers, and maintaining them, is not part of your core competencies. So why would you want to develop a competency in maintaining EPM servers if what really matters is to sell products, or if it's to build houses? You have all the new features we talked about, and in particular the last two ones, like where Ron emphasized on it. They will be available on premise, but we don't know when. So if you need these features now, if you're particularly excited about it, then in this case, you need to go to the cloud. There's one big thing, is that your environment is available instantly, or quasi-instantly. Ron is going to talk about it, so I'll let it for later. In some cases also, your organization, your IT, might be too busy with other projects, or you have quite a shortage of resources when it comes to Hyperion or EPM, and maybe you can't, or you cannot find any like good IT resource to maintain your system, or the resource who was there is leaving or left, and then you have nobody to maintain. So that's also another reason why you would want to move to the cloud. Your IT might say, look, I don't want to invest in EPM, it's not part of my priorities. It can be. I've seen many organizations where IT wants to invest in EPM, and they do a very, very good job. But I've seen some organizations where they say, you know what, EPM is not my business. Whereas for us, EPM is more a finance tool, so we don't want to take care of it. Another reason is that when you use the cloud, you're paying a subscription, and the subscription is all-inclusive, which means you're not going to pay your support fees or your maintenance fees, which can be quite a big amount of money. And another reason is that if like me and many other people, you've been traumatized by EPMA, and you don't want to see this tool anymore, then you might want to go to the cloud as well. And I hand it over to Ron.
So think about your budget in time and money. You've got a limited amount of time and money to spend to get to your desired end result. Let's just say that on a typical on-premise project, 20% of the time and money is taken on infrastructure and installation. That's not a bad estimate. It's not particularly scientific, but it will illustrate the point. So if you save that 20% on infrastructure and just skip it, you've got 20% that you can apply to the end of the project because you're going to do the same middle step. You still have to build the application, you still have to load the data, you still have to do the basic features, but you're going to have 20% left over to get to the advanced features. So if you think about infrastructure, it's all cost, no return. If you think about building the application, all cost, no return. Loading data, all cost, no return. Basic implementation, you're starting to get some return. But now, in advanced implementation, that's where the biggest ROI is. So you can actually get to the more advanced features and have a more refined deliverable. So why wouldn't you want to focus your investment on the higher ROI by skipping the lower ROI? So to me, this gets us to the good stuff faster and produces a much higher ROI deliverable.
Yeah, exactly. And by that, we mean we can go and have discussions about like driver-based planning. It's not just a basic implementation. You can go farther, quicker. So looking forward, will cloud succeed with EPM? I am pretty sure it will, and I think actually that we don't have much choice than move to the cloud. So that doesn't mean that all on-premise applications will go away. Like it will be a mix of on-premise and on the cloud. And like according to Larry Ellison, like even him says, like for a decade or two, we will still have like a significant on-premise computing. But it will become smaller and smaller, but will remain there because you need it. It's not like you cannot move everything to the cloud. But some things you can move it to the cloud. If you take emails, like today, I've seen a lot of companies going to the cloud for emails. Even if it's actually, when you look at it, you have pretty sensitive information in your emails, but still it's on the cloud, and we're okay with it. What's going to happen is you're going to use both. So that means one thing, is that you need to be able to move your data seamlessly between on-premise and the cloud. That also means that your applications that are available on the cloud needs to be more or less or very compatible with the applications that are available on-premise. And I think that is where Oracle have a big advantage over the competition. Like when you compare like PBCS to the pure cloud player, they don't have the possibility to go back to on-premise. I think that's the killer argument. And you can do many things. You can do your development on the cloud, your production on-premise. You can do your production and production on-premise. Have a DR environment on the cloud. This is very like flexible, and like each company is different, and each implementation is different. But what's important is that to stay like compatible, to have compatibility between what you have on the cloud and on-premise. Both ways. That's it. So this is pretty public. So I've been able to find this like publicly. So that's the cloud roadmap for EPM. So the key there is in the next release that we're expecting in this quarter, okay, you have one thing that's very different, which is enterprise planning and budgeting, EPBCS. The difference is you have workforce. So you have like the modules we know, workforce, Capex, project planning available on the cloud, plus another module which is financial statement planning, where you have like revenue, expense, balance sheet, cash flow, like out of the box. Big thing there, big thing. A new module, account reconciliation, so ARM on the cloud, and the one, at least I know Ron and I, we are waiting for it, and we're not the only one, it's that Essbase Cloud Services. So this is big. You have Essbase available on the cloud. You can create cubes from a spreadsheet. You have sandboxing. You have great mobile features. You can even like connect to cloud services for your data, so you can have your data in Dropbox or iCloud, and then push this data to Essbase. You have no more EAS. You do everything from a web interface, and you still have the same smart view, and you have also connection to BICS. We are excited about this actually. It's not because we have a new version of Essbase. We're excited because it's having Essbase going back to its roots. Like Essbase back to where it was at the very beginning, which was a server in the finance room that you could almost press reset if you have a problem, or that you can install yourself with a 1 or 2 floppy disks. So that's going to give Essbase back to users. And I've seen many occasions where you have users, they create what they call Essbase models, where if they had direct access to an Essbase cube, they could create this module in a cube, and it will be much more efficient. Very quickly, the release after, what's key there is the new cloud service, which is financial consolidation and close. So last year at Kaleidoscope, they said that we can expect this service available in the calendar year FY16. So somewhere this year, we will have like a financial consolidation on the cloud. So if you say, if you have HFM and planning, you might want to migrate planning. You say, what about HFM? At the end of the year, you will have the first version available. The big thing, the big rumor, and I think it's more than a rumor, is that this version of the consolidation will run on Essbase. So that's particularly exciting as well. And after that, what you have is that like HPCM on the cloud, tax provisioning, and also dimension management cloud service, which is DRM. So for your organization, for your organization, what are the next steps? Is to like define a cloud strategy and like assess your readiness for the cloud. Migrate your applications to the cloud. We can help you with that as well, and define cloud solutions. What we can do is go from like the beginning to the end with your cloud solution, from requirements to go live and training. And what it means is that you also have like requirements and design all the way through the implementation of your cloud solution. And the thing is, because PBCS is focused on results instead of your infrastructure, you have a big opportunity here, as Ron said earlier, is that you can spend more time about thinking about your transformation, about getting a bigger return on investment than when you're doing this on premise. Ron, you want to add something on PBCS baseline?
Sure. Since the focus of PBCS is really to focus on your business objectives and build faster, we have more of an opportunity to use pre-canned components or pre-built components to build the common aspects of the database faster. So PBCS comes with is an offering that TopDown, baseline is an offering that TopDown has that comes with some pre-built modules that essentially get you through the first common aspects of your build faster and just speed up the process. So it just makes it cheaper and faster to get to the desired endpoint. It's another option that we can offer.
Okay, thank you. And that will open the floor for questions. What questions do you have?
Shayna, I don't actually see the question box, so maybe you can read them for us.
Yes, I'm reading the question. Yeah, I'm reading the questions now. So the first question is, what about the data and security? Companies are concerned about their financial data and security. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, sure. How good do you think Oracle's security is? You know, they're one of the biggest companies in the world focused entirely on providing secure software. I think, you know, any company can have a security problem. You know, what's the probability that Oracle is going to have a security problem compared to your own company? I think betting on Oracle's security is a pretty good bet.
I agree. Like Oracle is probably safer than most of the organizations we've been working with. Like, because whatever they do, they have like the best security possible, and they apply it to all organizations. They apply the best security possible to your to your data, which is probably stronger than what you have in your company.
So one question that we get sort of frequently on PBCS implementations is how can you be better prepared? What do you need to do to get started? And Ludo alluded to this a little earlier, that the design process, the requirements gathering process is all the same. The data acquisition process is all the same. One opportunity that you've got here is to spend more time in the preparation process and the design and requirements process to really understand what are the new features and well, Ludo used the word transformation. What are the opportunities for transformation that you can implement new approaches to business problems? So rather than spend a lot of the design and requirements time on infrastructure-oriented aspects, I think you've got the opportunity to really think about transformation.
Okay, so the next question I have on here is how good is the performance of EPM in the cloud when compared to the non-cloud environment?
Excellent question. You're running on extremely fast boxes in the Oracle environment. I have noticed extremely good performance. I haven't done a very large implementation yet, but the our AGs are seconds with few thousand accounts and hundreds of entities. The performance has been pretty instantaneous.
Yeah, my understanding is that PBCS is actually like your applications are hosted on Exalytics servers, so you don't have an entire server for you. You're sharing this server with other organizations, but still you're on an Exalytics machine, which means that you're in memory. You have like fast drives. That's some serious machine.
Okay, so then the next question is, how is the autosave going to help when there are rules expected to run on the save of the web form? Would it slow down the performance of application as the business rules attached on save are running each cell update? The execution is not controlled by the user. And that's the question mark there.
Well, the autosave is not going to save, it's not going to include your post form data. That is, if it requires an administrator to go in and run an AG after users do work on the forms, for example, the old world where you might run the AG every hour or something because you're expecting users to be working on the forms intra-hour. Those admin scripts are not going to be run. So I don't think there's no drawback to it. You still have the advantage that the component that it applies to is saved.
And this is an option. So when you have your form, you have an option, which is to enable autosave or not. And you see if it's taking too long, which I doubt, then you untick it. But if you have a calculation that takes 2 minutes, whenever you hit save, enabling autosave, it won't go down like every time you enter your data in a cell, it's not going to take 2 minutes.
Okay, we don't have any more questions, you guys.
Okay, oh, that's very good. 59.
Let's just make a comment about Kscope.
Exactly.
Of course, I always like to say that if you're a Hyperion professional, you can't afford not to go to Kscope. It's the best value in training there is. It's about half the price of public Hyperion training at more like $400 or $450 a day rather than $800 or $850 a day. And you'll never find this list of topics anywhere else. So Kscope is a must-do from my perspective. If you use our code, TPDWN, you'll save $100 on your registration. And Ludo and I will both be doing a couple of presentations there, so we look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ludo.
Cool. And thanks for attending. Thank you, Shana.